So it's probably no surprise that Five Deadly Venoms happens to know a little bit about Chinatown. But I'm gonna take you somewhere real special that runs deep in the history of New York City and is actually one of the most fascinating parts, I think, of Chinatown. Doyer Street, AKA the Bloody Angle. There have been more murders here on this corner than anywhere else in the city, according to the New York Times. But the reason I love this is that Doyer Street and the Bloody Angle has some of the most important history about Chinatown, all within this kind of few meters. This was the heart of the Chinatown gang wars. The Hip Sing Tong, the On Leong Tong, they used to go to war here along with the four brothers, and they would literally go and fight with hatchets, which is where that term hatchet man comes from. It's actually from the fights that used to happen here. And I'm gonna take you in. So what you see right here is a little curiosity shop. Now this store is real famous because it's been here for years and years and years. What people always forget is that this used to be part of the heroin trade here in New York City. But now they just sell statues, they don't sell so much heroin. So over here, you see a building that just looks like a restaurant these days. The 5 Doyer Street has some deep history. That used to be the Chinatown Theater, where there was one of the most infamous gang assassinations of all time here in the Chinatown neighborhood that then kicked off almost, I think it was 30 years of gang warfare here in the city. But now, the place I've wanted to take you, tasty hand-pulled Noodles Incorporated. So now that we're here, why don't we grab a seat, get something to eat. You know, back in the day, you'd occasionally walk by these storefronts and you hear this slapping, right? Because one of the most common ways to prep the dough for the noodles is that they kind of twist and slap and they're always hitting this steel table. This place is particularly special for me though, because a lot of the students from USA Shaolin Temple, after we do our big testing sessions, we'd all come here totally drained of energy and just eat a whole lot of noodles and drink a whole lot of soup. And this is always sort of a small place we kind of get away to as a crew and to sort of reflect upon the lessons that we learned at the temple and ease some of the bruises that we had on our bodies. So the best things about these soups and why we used to come here all the time after the temple is that we could never really agree on what we wanted. So like all of us just got like order number 1 because it's really like the most Chinese of soups. But the best thing is they got knife cut noodles here. So you won't see them prepare it, but they take like a hooked blade, it looks like a cleaver. But the cool thing about the knife cut noodle, it's exactly what you think it is. It's kind of this weirdly shaped, kind of inconsistently shaped noodle, which just is really nice because what ends up happening is because the noodle has different textures and thicknesses and densities all the way throughout, it actually adds a lot to like the actual eating experience. It's not so chewy, sometimes it is, but it gives a little bit of like, you know, good mouthfeel in that weird, creepy way that people say mouthfeel when they talk about food, but it's like got a good mouthfeel. I'm not going to say that anymore though, because that's just making me feel really weirded out. All right, so we just had some great tasty hand-pulled Noodles Incorporated. Now I'm going to take you to a couple more of my additional haunts. But one of the baddest places you'll ever find is right here. It's Boklei Trading, and it is the place where you get all your martial arts supplies when you're downtown here in Chinatown. So if you need a sword, if you need to get a kind of discount, not so great shi knife or kendo, or you just want to get some great books of martial arts, this is the joint you're going to go to. So now I'm going to show you my favorite park, which incidentally was the first park I came to when I moved here to New York. I came to this park for one reason and one reason alone. I had to use the bathroom. But more importantly, Columbus Park is pretty wild because it's sort of this cultural hub for a lot of what Chinatown is and what you're going to find when you come here to see what New York style of Chinese culture is. So you find a lot of folks playing different games, tabletop all at the bottom, and up top, in that gazebo, you typically find people practicing boxing, kung fu, and all sorts of crazy things because that's what you do in Columbus Park. But I never called it Columbus Park. I always called it Sun Yat-sen Park because in this park, we have the glorious statue of Sun Yat-sen with, of course, that famous inscription, Tian Xia Wei Gong, all under heaven are equal. And if that ain't something that works for the 5 Deadly Venoms, I don't know what does. So Columbus Park is pretty wild because it's got the turf pitch. So what you'll find here is a lot of people come here, it's a lot of soccer leagues, basketball courts, etc. But back in those darker days of Chinatown, gunshots would ring out sometimes at night. I had a friend who grew up in this area, and when they played ball, you know, it'd be like 6 o'clock at night, they're shooting some hoops, and then pop, pop, pop. What happened? They hit the deck, check to make sure everyone's okay, and get back to playing. That tells you how much this area has changed. And that's a beautiful thing about New York. It's always in flux and it's always evolving. But if you want my personal opinion of one, and you need a dumpling store to go to, the dumpling store you go to is at 42 Mulberry, and it is Tasty Dumpling. And it is exactly what you think. The dumplings are tasty, and they are dirt cheap. You usually get a plate for about $3. It's good enough for me, good enough for students. I'm all good. Now, the last stop on our tour of Chinatown, courtesy of yours truly, GreatRootBear, is actually going to be at the first place where I really discovered what it was to be a member of this community, and that is the beautiful city of New York. What you have right here is the USA Shaolin Temple. The Shaolin Temple is a really, really unique place because what a lot of people don't realize is that Shaolin Kung Fu is based on Chan Buddhism. But why it's important is that what Shifu teaches is what he calls action meditation, sharpening your blade. Because Kung Fu is just meditation, and people don't realize that. See, they want to think that it's all about fighting arts, looking great, being awesome, and it is. But the most important aspect of Shaolin Kung Fu is that you are strengthening your mind, you're strengthening your heart. And a lot of those values are what I tried to put into the 5 Deadly Venoms. I mean, look, Waypoint's just around the corner from here, and having the temple here, and where was my home for a long time, was one of the reasons we took the name 5 Deadly Venoms. But we're gonna get inside so you can see just a little bit of one of the most unique places here in New York that if you have a chance to drop by for a trial class, if you're here for a week, I encourage you to check it out. You'll find nothing else in the world like it. So I hope you enjoyed this little historical tour of Chinatown. No, it wasn't all of New York. I know I said I promised a whole bunch of New York spots, but the other Venoms are gonna have that covered for you. But from me to you, I just wanna say thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions about coming down to Chinatown, rocking it out with the crew, just find us on Twitter at NYXL_Venoms. Otherwise, you can always find us in the local meetup section of the NYXL Discord. So once again, this is GreatRootBear, also known as Rich, saying peace and Amitofo. I'll catch you later.